But the senator, while indoctrinated, could not explain his toxicity.
You should not listen to men's rights advocates if you want to know what they have to say.
Greetings, lads and lasses, and welcome to HBR News number 171. Now Michael Kimmel needs MRAs to bail him out. I am your host, Brian Martinez, and I am here with my esteemed alt-right entitled, rape apologizing, room cleaning, incel, red pill Reddit posting, fedora tipping, fascist Pepe loving, Trump supporting, Nazi apologizing, this is America memeing, women enslaving, poo-poo heads, to look at the best feels, funnies, and what the fucks to discuss Clam Slam Badger style.
How dare you? I've never cleaned my room.
Let's get started, shall we? Today's group of adventurers consists of Mike J., the squire of the script, Hannah the bard, weaving tales rife with pearls of wisdom, Dr. Random Rakam, the Vatican assassin, and me.
I don't know, man. I was banging 7-gram rocks and finishing them because that's how I roll. I have one speed, I have one gear. Go.
And me, the Doge in charge. We have a great show lined up for you guys today, so please be sure to continue the conversations both in the chat and in the comment section. On this week's HBR News Show, we'll be talking about Michael Kimmel being accused of sexual harassment, Elm City Games' Matt Loter attacking the quartering at GenCon, slapping women on the street as a hate crime, and more. And stick around afterwards for the patron-only after show. Remember when Forbes used to be a magazine with a focus on business? Pepperidge Farm remembers. Contributor and psychoanalyst Prudy Gorchian has written an op-ed in an attempt to address the current tensions between the sexes in the workplace in the wake of the hashtag MeToo movement. Her prescription? Let's just say the title is this: why in the world would men stop mentoring women post hashtag MeToo? Why, you ask? That's a good question. Anyway, if you'd like to participate in our after shows, either as an audience member or a participant, please consider becoming a patron at www.patreon.com/honeybadgerradio. And if you don't want to wake up one morning to find yourself unable to find our content because YouTube finally dropped the axe on our channels, go to badgerfeed.com. That's badgerfeed.com. Now, people are telling me that I am a little bit quiet. I am using a new microphone today. It's a directional one, so it won't pick up any of the sort of like ambient sounds, in the house, like my barking dog as much. But I will make some adjustments. I don't know if this is going to work. So I'll try to figure something out. But in the meantime, I do have it turned up all the way. So hopefully this won't be a problem. Oh, I think I see. Okay, how do I sound now? It's aimed at my mouth. Thanks for the tip. Okay. So let me know what your thoughts are. In the meantime, can you guys hear me okay in the chat with me? Mike J, Mike, and Hannah?
Yes.
A little bit on the loud side, but you're good.
I'm a little bit on the loud side. I'll just turn it down a little bit. Loud now, of course. So, there's just no pleasing you people. Okay, so let's go ahead and get into the first story. Meanwhile in Japan, that's basically what I'm going to call this one. Mike J.
Thank you, Brian. So the Tokyo Medical University, widely considered one of Japan's top medical universities, appears to have been artificially lowering the scores for female students' entrance exams. Japanese website Yomiuri Shimbun, at least that's what I'm going to call it, reports that the university has been lowering entrance exam results for female students for at least a decade in order to keep the ratio of female students below 30% in each class. Information about the grades tampering was leaked as part of an ongoing investigation into corruption among the university's top administration. So far, the corruption investigation has seen the resignation of both the chairman of the school's board of regents and the university president. An unnamed source told the same Japanese website that the reason for the grades tampering was that female students are more likely to leave the medical profession to have children. Quote, There was a silent understanding to accept more male students as one way to resolve the doctor shortage, end quote, and that it was a, quote, necessary evil. Yusuke Tsugawa, a doctor working as an assistant professor at UCLA, calls this, quote, the worst possible way to fix the problem, end quote, adding, quote, Tokyo Medical University's job, their role, and their mission is to train the doctors. Their mission is not to ensure an optimal workforce in Japan.
All right. Japan they have a funny way of solving problems of inequality.
Well, the funny thing is that was kind of the way things. I don't know about the test score lowering, but fewer women were accepted into these kinds of schools of study in the U.S. prior to Title IX for that same reason, and they're right. I hate to say it, and I know that this is probably going to get cherry picked. I predict a David Futrell article, but the fact is, it is not serving the community for the community to guarantee funds for schooling, and particularly in areas like medicine, and have women go into those areas and get that schooling and then come out on the other end of a long series of coursework, because you're not going to school 4 years to become a doctor. You're going to school 8 years at least, and sometimes longer, especially if you are going to be a specialist. But then they come out of there and they don't use that education for the community. They come out of there and they use that education for a little while and then they quit. And the investment that the community has just made goes to waste. And I hate to say it, but it's not necessarily wrong to, if women are going to do that, to have some sort of mitigation for that problem. Maybe that's not the best one. Maybe they ought to say, well, if you used guaranteed school funding and then you leave the medical profession before a certain number of years is up due to anything other than disability that you couldn't foresee, you owe all that money back. And just like something along those lines. If you received grant money and you received scholarship money to become a doctor, and you became a doctor for 5 minutes, and then you quit, you owe all that money back. Then maybe more women would take seriously the idea of sticking with the profession after they get the job.
Yeah, Alice, Hannah, you're going a little bit robotic. But I mean, we heard most of what you were saying. So, but I'm just letting you know.
I may have to drop out and restart, which
Okay.
means we're going to lose my audio, because it's not showing that there's anything wrong with my audio at my end.
Well, yeah, we just keep going. It's fine. Is it raining or storming where you are by any chance? I don't know why, but sometimes if it's been storming here in Chicago off and on all day, and sometimes when the weather is bad, it does fuck with the internet. So
I don't think it is, but it is cloudy. Well, no, it's storming. It's just not storming over my head.
Okay. Well, yeah, I guess we may have to do that with the.
Well, I was gonna say, if it's storming, it's not my computer. It's not gonna make a difference if I leave and come back.
Yeah, we may just have to deal with it. So
deal with it.
Yeah, no biggie. I was just asking. So, anyway, just for the record, I'm obviously I just find that this story is funny more than anything. But this is kind of like something that people are getting upset about because they think this is the worst possible way to fix a problem. But the funny thing is that things like this happen in the States and in the West as well. It just goes the other way. And when that happens, we call it, adjusting for equality. And while the reasons might be, the reason might be different, at the end of the day, you have people like trying to rig the game in some way. So I found it a little bit ironic that they were rigging it against women. And, of course, some UCLA professor is freaking out about it. So thank you for the subscription or follow, Cogwhistle. somebody who just followed us on Twitch, and I just happened to see it. So anyway, if there's no other thoughts on this one, I'm just going to move on to the next story. I just thought it was kind of funny, so. All right, then moving on. So before we get into the bulk of this one, Stapler added a little note to it. So Andrew G., who's not with us on the show, he did write up this piece, but Stapler wanted to add an additional tidbit of info. So this story should get a little bit of an introduction. Marie Laguerre was walking down the street in Paris a couple weeks ago when a stranger made dirty comments about her. She shouted back at him, and he came back to confront her, slapping Marie in front of a crowd at a cafe. I will play a clip. If you are paying attention to the screen, you will notice the clip I am playing for you guys right now. If you look over here on the left side, the confrontation happens. The woman gets slapped. After that, this is just the video footage. This hero here grabs a chair and becomes parking lot Batman, or rather cafe Batman. And it's basically just like, it's an unfortunate incident with a guy, I don't know. There was just a street argument, and it resulted in her getting slapped. Afterwards, she made an appearance on a news show discussing the situation, because this is what's considered news in France. Some woman gets slapped and people make a big deal out of it. So, here's the clip.
Yeah, policeman, the problem is...
Look like a North African immigrant, so... it was probably some kind of hobo, though. It's just someone that doesn't understand you're not supposed to yell expletives at homeless people, because they can just punch you and they'll get arrested, but they'll just be back in the same place again the next day.
Yeah. So she makes an appearance on the news. This is what she says.
Is that today, I don't even know if the police knows what's sexist and what isn't. And I think it's not enough. I think we need first to change mentalities and put a lot more money into education and prevention.
All right. So she's claiming that because this happened to her, this is something that we need to just change the education system to address. So let's get into the story itself. But I want you guys to see the video clips for some context. After a French woman had an ashtray thrown at her and was slapped in public after confronting a man making hateful comments to her, there has been a renewed public discussion about men being misogynistic in public. Nicola Heath writes for the Australian Broadcast Corporation, asking whether or not a hate crime law punishing misogyny would be effective in Australia. To get insight into Australia's handling of supposed sexist and misogynistic acts, Heath spoke to Gally Mason, a professor of criminology at the University of Sydney Law School and coordinator of the Australian Hate Crime Network. According to her, only crimes in New South Wales and Victoria are where police are forced to record hate crimes. Now, for the record, I know that what we showed you guys took place in France, but this is being used by an Australian to sort of advocate for these legal changes. So you know that these aren't disconnected things. According to Mason,
it's already illegal to punch someone on the street, and she was there talking about, we need to put more money into education. What? So that maybe in a generation in the distant future, there'll be men in that generation who will immediately get up and go to your rescue if they see that happening. Because that's exactly what happened at this scene. Every man there kind of instinctively went, "Oh shit, let's go do something about this." And
yes.
A couple of them even got right to their feet. One of them grabbed a chair or something.
Yeah, I can go back to it.
That is an educated populace. That's a populace of men already perfectly educated in the thing you want them to be educated in. But there's one guy at that scene who's a bit fucking wrong in the head and doesn't care about punching a woman in public.
No,
those men are very rare. That's why this is a story, because it's so very fucking rare for a man to be that, to punch a woman like he would punch a man.
Exactly. He slapped her, though, so he didn't actually hit her like he would a man. He did it a different way. But let's go back. I'm going to go back to the video and show you. So you can see here, and I'm sorry if this is too small. You might have to maximize our video. You'll see that there are men in this cafe sitting in chairs, and there are also women at this cafe. These two girls that are closest to the camera, in fact. And watch what happens when this happens. you'll see the reaction from the men. See, this dude immediately springs into action like Adam West. This woman stands up. These two see it. This guy becomes active. This guy is ready. This guy is ready. This guy is ready. So you can see that everyone has started to mobilize. You see? The men have immediately started to address the situation. These girls here in the front, they went back to whatever it is they were doing. They're just chatting again. So, but the focus is on the person that hit her, the man that hit her for being a man. Meanwhile, all these people, most of whom are men, are actually reacting in a, let's say, a sympathetic way towards her, protective way. I guess the guy with the chair, this brave soul over here, who was rated like, because I don't know if you noticed this, I'm going to show you again. This dude that's sitting here, that's closest to the action, he gets up and grabs a chair like he's about to, like this is the WWE, and he's about to throw down. I want to show you. Look at him. Let me get this chair. But he doesn't do anything.
He's going to hit him with it.
I know, but he didn't do anything. Now, but so like this is, we have our eye focused on the one man who did, he did assault the woman. It's not
evidence of a misogynistic culture.
It's
not even evidence of a misogynistic man. It's just a man who had a problem with a particular woman for reasons we don't know because we can't hear the sound. What would be evidence of a misogynistic culture is if a man did that to a woman and then everyone just carried on eating their lunch. Maybe a few smiled and, pumped their fists in the air and said, "You go, boy."
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say, do we even know what the verbal exchange was that predicated this?
No, I don't think. No, we don't. It was a video with no audio. The man and the woman walked past each other earlier in the video, and there was some words, exchanged. I think he spoke first. I don't know if he was, again, just a raving homeless person or whatever, because he's carrying like a plastic bag, like a garbage bag full of stuff. And she claps back, and then he comes back around and confronts her next to the cafe, and then he slaps her. But we don't see it because it's like kind of off camera. We just see her reaction. So
we don't even know if this is a situation in which, where the sexes reversed, the slap would have been viewed as completely reasonable.
Yeah, well, most likely we would have seen it as like people would have probably just not.
Well, it depends,
or it wouldn't have been news.
Like, a lot of people don't necessarily consider it completely reasonable to come up and slap somebody out of the blue, but let's say this is reversed. Hannah,
you're breaking up really bad. We can't even make out what you're saying. I'm sorry. Hello? Hello? No, barely. You're like it's. How about leaving? How about leaving the call and coming back in? I don't know if that'll work, but. Or you could restart Discord, maybe.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
It's better now.
The problem wasn't Discord. The problem is the local weather. There's not really anything I do about it. But what I was going to say was, the situation, if you reverse the sexes and say a woman came up and said hi to a guy and he reacted with something, obscene and nasty and cruel or something like that. And she slapped him for it. Everybody would say, well, you shouldn't talk to a woman that way. It's disrespectful. What if the situation was that? Of course, people recognize that the slap is escalating from verbal abuse to physical abuse, and that's wrong. But the reality is, it wouldn't matter what happened in this situation. If the guy didn't do anything wrong to begin with, and she said something nasty to him, and then, reported to everybody, well, he was asking for it, he shouldn't have spoken to me because he was homeless. People would treat it that way. Oh, it's misogynistic. He shouldn't have approached this woman. That's sexist. And if he did say something because he's got something wrong with him. If he said something, nasty because his mind is off, then they would treat it like he was responsible for it, even if he couldn't be, because he's a man. So this guy couldn't win in this situation no matter what.
No.
And the idea that we live in a misogynistic society and that you can make an action more wrong because it's done to a woman is just absolutely ridiculous. We already live in a society where an action can be considered more wrong because it's done to a woman, and it doesn't stop some people from engaging in the behavior anyway towards women, because some people have something wrong with them where they don't recognize that there's going to be a more severe consequence to their actions because the person they're dealing with is a woman. They don't understand the risk they are taking when they engage in that type of an action. That is having something wrong with you. That is not a situation where you are representative of the attitude of modern society. And it doesn't matter whether the rest of us all object and say, you know what, something shouldn't be more wrong if you do it to a woman. That's not going to change. That's probably never going to change. There's probably always going to be people that will have the attitude that if a thing is wrong, doing a thing is wrong. It's more wrong if you do it to a woman. That attitude's probably never going to go away completely.
Yep.
But we're also, it's the one thing that we can object to effectively, and the one thing that we can get people to understand is there is no amount of relying on that is going to stop crazy people from doing stupid things. Period.
Yeah. Presuming that's the case, which I think it looks that way. But even if this goes back to what Mike was saying, even if it wasn't, even if it was a completely sane guy who actually hated women and was looking for an excuse to hit her, and this is going with the most, probably the worst case scenario with this dude. The fact that all the other dudes stood up and they were ready to throw down, and one of them even went so far as to grab a chair, that is evidence against a misogynistic culture. That is evidence
Also,
of the opposite. Go ahead, Mike.
I've got the original video up. Like we're trying to find out like what this whole incident was predicated on, and this is just the description, so take it with a grain of salt. But this is, I think, the original upload of it. It says a woman in Paris has posted footage online of a man attacking her in the street after she reprimanded him for sexually harassing her. So that's, I guess,
That's
the closest we're gonna get.
The question then becomes, was the sexual harassment something that he should not have said, or did he just say hello? Because feminists have been deeming just greeting women on the street at all, if you're not the guy they wanted to be greeted by, as sexual harassment.
Fortunately, there's no way to know.
Of course,
Yeah.
It's kind of up in the air, and you know what? The fact that we can't determine whether or not this is like, what is being defined as sexual harassment in this case, but the fact that we can't determine it is the fault of feminists for expanding the definition to the point where we can't even determine what's being discussed as, truly harassment, or if it's just some guy saying hello or God bless or something like that, right? So,
or if nothing happened and she just made it up as an excuse because she said something rotten to the guy and he came back and slapped her, and she needed something more than, he reacted aggressively to my aggression and I'm a girl and he shouldn't do that.
yep.
I'm looking through some stories, and I think I've got a slightly clearer picture. This is that one woman, Marie, the last name starts with an A, Laguerre.
Laguerre, yeah.
She said that the unidentified bearded man, quote, made dirty noises, commented, and whistled.
Okay. So he
Kind
could have,
of noises are dirty noises.
and by the way, he's in front of a cafe with lots of women. So he could have been doing it at any of those women. He could have been doing it at some of the men. So it's hard to say, it's hard to say. But let me get through the rest
Did he
of the
ask
write-up.
her if she believes in the hereafter?
Yeah, I
And
mean,
then
who
tell her,
knows?
then you know what I'm here after.
Yeah.
Sorry, that's probably a reference that's a little too old for everybody. Nobody else remembers the old man on the bench and the old lady with the bag from Laughing.
Nope. I don't.
Oh.
No, I'm sorry.
You guys will all have to look that up now.
Okay, we'll look it up. All right, so let me get through the rest of this thing. According to Mason, misogynistic behavior should, in theory, be classified as a hate crime because, quote, sexual assault, for example, is often motivated by objectification of women, prejudicial and stereotyped attitudes towards women, and sometimes hatred towards women. Is there a difference between that type of bias and racial bias or ethnic bias? Not necessarily. She also adds that, quote, but you have to ask yourself, what's achieved by including sexual assault as a hate crime? We already have aggravated penalties for aggravated forms of sexual assault. So do we need additional sentencing provisions on top of that? I am not convinced. Helen Voce, or Voci, I think it might be pronounced as, the chief executive of Nottingham's Women's Centre, adds that, quote, the primary objective of the policy change was not to see hundreds of prosecutions. It was to let people know that this behavior is not acceptable and will not be tolerated in Nottinghamshire. Concluding, Mason also states that, quote, do we prosecute somebody who calls out a sexist comment on the street? Probably not. You don't get a criminal conviction for that. But we need to find ways of getting the message out there that that's not acceptable, and the justice system does have a role to play in that. So we're going to go ahead and make it... That's why, Mike, when you were saying, you know, it's already illegal to hit people, because it is, they don't think it's illegal enough to hit women specifically.
Get with the Nottingham program, man. It's illegal. It's a hate crime to whistle at them. Remember, it's a hate crime to say something nice to them. I think it's probably a hate crime to smile at them if they find your smile particularly creepy.
Good. You know, Nottingham or Nottinghamshire is considered a little bit rural compared to places like London, right? I'm like
yeah, a little bit.
So, I guess wouldn't it stand to be that probably the people in Nottingham don't like this law because I don't know, we were just there, right? And the people there, women and men, they tend to really like to engage in conversation and interaction with other human beings. So it wouldn't seem to me that the actual citizens of Nottinghamshire are happy, or maybe they don't know about this law.
I don't know why they didn't test it out on a London borough first. Since you're all such progressives down in that London, why didn't you start the Nottinghamshire model there? Oh yeah, because most of the people prosecuted might be non-white.
They could start in Rotherham. They could maybe try the law out there and just see what happens. See what happens.
I get the horrible feeling that might be the police's sort of way of responding to that problem without mentioning Muslims or Islam in any way. This is how we're going to prevent that from happening. We're going to take rights away from all men. It's going to keep happening, folks.
Mm-hmm. And it's because we all know if you take things that are illegal and you make them more illegal, and then it's like double secret probation.
Yeah.
Nobody will commit the crimes anymore.
Yeah, then crazy homeless people are more likely to listen.
Yes.
I got a couple super chats, and then I'm going to hand it off to Mike J for the next story. So we got $2 from Mr. Roboto, who says, well, that feminism for you, blame men at all cost. And then Mr. Roboto again for $2 says, and here is where due process died or will soon. Thank you, Mr. Roboto, and anybody else who wants to give us a super chat, we will read it on the air. Please do that. Also, we've only gotten through the second story, and we need more likes. So please smash that like button. If you could, it really helps us out. I also like to let Alison know that the news show is probably the second most popular show after the talk show. And maybe I'm only saying that because Hannah's here. I'm not. Maybe not, though. Maybe I genuinely think that Hannah's show is better than mine. But it's not a competition anyway. But just give us the likes. It's good for me. Helps me justify working here and putting food on my table. So, okay. So handing it back over to Mr. Mike J. Could you tell us a little bit about the quartering?
Sure I can, Brian. So on the night of August the 2nd, while in the area for GenCon 2018, Jeremy Hambley, better known on YouTube as The Quartering, was assaulted while at the Tin Roof Bar. Hambley was asked about his identity before the assailant sucker punched him numerous times while reportedly yelling, quote, "I'm going to fucking kill you," end quote. Once Hambley was able to make it into the bar and away from the attack, the assailant broke one of the bar's windows before leaving. Eyewitnesses have identified the assailant as Matt Lauder of Elm City Games. Lauder was easily identified due to his white tank top with rainbow design and sleeve tattoos. Internet detectives were quick to establish a motive. On May 31st, Lauder was contacted on Twitter and told that Hambley would be present at this year's GenCon. Lauder tweeted out 5 days later, quote, "Real talk, if you have a problem with @FemFreak, so Anita Sarkeesian, being invited to GenCon, fucking fight me. I'm easy to find," end quote. After news of this discovery and the ensuing police report filed by Hambley began to spread, Lauder promptly deleted his Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn accounts, though I've been told his LinkedIn account is back. Comics artist Ethan Schreier has since set up a GoFundMe for Hambley to fund a potential civil lawsuit against Lauder, which has so far amassed over $15,000.
All right. So, I guess a little bit of, I mean, this has been all over YouTube and, you know, lots of people have commented on it. The only thing I wanted to say is a couple things. I used to love going to GenCon. I used to go every single year since like 1992. And that was when it was in Wisconsin. So we would go, we'd like, you know, get in like one of our friends' cars and drive up to Wisconsin and like spend the weekend there gaming and like, you know, having a good time. And it really makes me sad to see that there are people who get assaulted at GenCon over ideological differences, I guess. I don't even know if it even goes that far, because what it looks like to me is preemptive internet white knighting going into the real world. And I'm not going to Gen Con anymore. I'm not going to cons. It seems like they're all like this. They're just poisoned at the core with this kind of ideology. Now, I know that Jeremy did stream from Gen Con and he stayed there for, I don't know if he was there for the whole weekend, but I know he did. He was there for a couple days, and he was getting a lot more. Like when people recognized him, they would walk up and you know, shake his hand and say, "Hey man, it's good to see you. I hope you're doing okay." He got a lot more support than aggression. But the fact is, he was worried, you know, that there was somebody else that was going to possibly attack him, like some other asshole, like, you know, called him names or something. I think he got like a couple of other people who, you know, said something, but they didn't act on it. But that's just, it's a really fucked up climate, you know. And I'm reminded when I was coordinating with my friends, talking about possibly going to Gen Con this year, and one of my friends dropped the link that Anita Sarkeesian was going. At the time, he still, as far as I know, is relatively ambivalent on Anita Sarkeesian, despite the fact that I've told him, you know, about all of her shit. And what I mean is not just what she believes, but the things that she's done. You know, the things that she did at VidCon, the things that she's done with her videos, the ways in which she has misrepresented, twisted, and outright essentially tried to destroy people's reputations and even attacked communities, you know, for not being whatever it is she thinks they should be. And it turned into a large debate on social media where friends of his who I don't know, so mutual friends, I guess, well, he's mutual friend of mine or whatever, have threatened me, you know, like after I've argued against, you know, Anita Sarkeesian being necessary to go to Gen Con because she went there to speak or whatever, and he was asking if it's necessary, and I said no, she's a shill. Like, even if you were going to have somebody there talking about women's issues in gaming, whatever the fuck that means, I think she's the worst possible person to do it. And people were really angry that I even had that opinion. So it was like, well, why are you even asking what my opinion is? And it got to the point where there were people saying, you know, if I see you at Gen Con, You know, you better look out. And I'm like, what the fuck, dude? One of them, by the way, was a DePaul University professor who wrote a blog post celebrating the removal of Milo Yiannopoulos from DePaul University. Do you remember when Milo went to DePaul and the Black Lives Matter people stormed the stage and they started dancing up there and yelling at him? There was a professor that worked there who is I guess, you know, we have a mutual friend. It was a guy I used to live with, like a roommate I had like way back in the day. And that guy was writing an article celebrating what happened to Milo. And he actually ended up getting into an argument with Karen in the comments over the Milo business, and he blocked her. But that guy, I was talking with him, and he's the guy who said, if I see you at GenCon, you better look out. And I was like, what the fuck, dude? Like, I mean, I didn't go so far as to file a report or anything. I just figured he was angry and talking out of his ass. But this is not that unusual, and it's getting worse. You know, it seems to me it's getting worse, and it's not new. You know, you know what happened with us a while back in 2015. There's just a lot of hostility that's been created from this social justice shit, and it's making people violent. And the white knighting for Anita, you know, that, I mean, she's probably the least white knightable person that I can possibly think of. But yeah, I just wanted to share those thoughts. So I don't know if anybody else has.
Yeah. I want to point a few things out. First of all, one of the excuses that was used the entire time for kicking us out was the idea that our side of the political fence is dangerous, that we are a threat, that we create an environment in which people feel unsafe, and that we are a threat to the supposed safety of the event. That was one of the purported reasons. That was purportedly the main reason, in fact, why we were evicted, despite the fact that there was not only no evidence to back it, but that there was evidence against that assertion. And that accusation has stood on their side of the fence. That's the accusation that has been made over and over again on their side of the fence, consistently against people on our side of the political fence, our side of the political spectrum. Everybody that is not an extreme leftist basically gets lumped into the extreme right, right? We're all extreme right, supposedly.
Mm-hmm.
That accusation has been the accusation they have leveled every single time. It's been the accusation they've leveled consistently. They never wavered from it. And yet all of the violence that has taken place at any event like this, all of the violence that has taken place in protests, all of the violence that has taken place in response to people speaking, all of the violence that has taken place where people have been stalked on the street, stalked when they are going out to eat with friends and family, and so on. It has all been social justice ideologues. It has never been from the people that they are claiming to be defending themselves against. The lie is wearing so thin that you you wouldn't want to use it for anything anymore. Anybody can see through this. It's become so blatantly obvious that it is nothing but a lie, nothing but an excuse, nothing but a very thin facade behind which they hide. It's not even stopping people from recognizing how wrong what they're doing is. And yet they continue. And they continue because they have these big companies, they have corporate support, and they're certain that they have the courts. And they probably have the lower courts. I mean, it's pretty obvious from our experience that they have the lower courts in Canada. And it's pretty obvious from Count Dankula's experience that they have the lower courts in the UK.
Mm-hmm.
The only place that we're going to find this out, the only way that this is going to be fixed is if we turn our backs on all of these businesses en masse. You know, and this is going to be painful and hard. People aren't going to want to do it. It can't just be Brian not going to GenCon. It has to be Gamergate all over again. It has to be people turning around and saying, no, we're not going to buy your product. No, you're supporting this violence that in the name of peace, supposedly in the name of peace, is being thrown at our community. No, we're not going to support your company. No, we're not going to click on your ads. No, we're not going to use your website without ad block. Whatever. You got to be able to turn around and tell them to fuck off in no uncertain terms. There needs to be another disrespectful nod, and it needs to be bigger. It needs to be more widespread. It needs to hit everyone. They can hit with their fists. Everyone else needs to hit with their wallets.
Mm-hmm. Or hit them
Fists
in their wallets.
Yeah. And I'm not saying don't defend yourself. If you get assaulted, you do what you got to do. But the bottom line is, these people think they can get away with this shit because we're letting them get away with this shit over and over and over again. Needs to stop.
We need to make our own cons, guys. We need to make our own cons.
I'd be up for that.
I'd be up for that too. I've been talking about it a little bit here and there.
I want to see one in Dayton, Ohio.
I want to see one in.
That's because I don't have to drive to get there.
Should have an international conference for like men's issues.
That sounds bigoted.
We should start doing that like any year now.
Okay. I got some super chats here. So, Southern Celtic Water says, "Have y'all heard about Alex Jones?" Yes, we have. We're gonna be doing a something about that. I'll be doing a Breaking Badger on that later.
Stay tuned.
Field of Bears gives us $5 and says, "I am a liberty extremist. Watch out! I'll extremely let you alone." And Hokey Pukisa gives us $1.99 and says, "Ad block everything, no exceptions." Yeah. Ad block everything. Thanks, guys, for that. If there's any other final thoughts on the Jeremy situation, the quartering situation? I guess
not on the quartering situation specifically, but one more thing on the ad block everything. If you have to un-ad block to read a news story, archive it. Use archive.is, use archive.org, use freeze page, use whatever you got to use so that way you can share it, and then you can re-ad block. Everybody doesn't have to pay them if it's from a website that's promoting violence like this against people because they have incorrect beliefs. If they're advocating it's okay to punch Nazis and then calling everybody that disagrees with them Nazis, archive their stuff. And then when you share the archive.
There you go.
And yeah, Jeremy, this could well take 3 years. Take it from us. In fact, you should have us on the show if you fancy talking about the trial. Take it from us. If you have problems at cons, it takes at least 3 years to sue them. It's a slightly different situation and shit. But yeah, bear in mind you will get lots of complete pricks trying to dishearten you by saying ridiculous shit at you. Because this story is going to be less than fresh in a week, and it's going to take much longer than for a week for it to resolve. So all the people with very short attention spans who just want the earliest dramas are soon going to get very sick of this and start turning on you, Jeremy. But don't worry, those are people you never really wanted.
Yeah.
After listening to his latest video, he definitely seems very aware of that. And he's already basically said, anyone who wants to tell me that this didn't happen or I'm making shit up or my eyewitnesses are lying.
Yeah. Or
they know where to go stick it.
All the internet black belts and MMA fighters that are giving him advice on what he should be doing or should have done. Guys, come on. All right. Let's see. So, we got another super chat here. Tyler Preston gives us $5 and says, "Who knows what evil lurks in the hearts of men? The shadow knows." I think that's how he says it too. So, Moving on to the next. Oh, we're already on the last story, but this is the best story. Or I mean, yeah, it's the big one. It's the one I wanted to talk about. Michael Kimmel is a distinguished professor of sociology and gender studies at the State University of New York, Stony Brook. He is also an outspoken feminist who describes himself as, quote, a tireless advocate of engaging men to support gender equality. He most recently made an appearance in Cassie J's The Red Pill, in which he had some criticisms for the men's rights movement. Putting that lightly, he compared them to the white nationalist movement. But that's an aside. I digress. However, Kimmel is back in the spotlight. Kimmel was originally supposed to be presented a major award from the American Sociological Association. Instead, he is asking the ASA to delay the award for 6 months to clear the air of rumors of his alleged sexual misconduct. Telling Inside Higher Education, Kimmel states that, quote, while nothing has been formally alleged to the best of my knowledge, he said, I take such concerns seriously and want to validate the voices of those who are making such claims. I want to hear those charges, hear those voices, and make amends to those who believe I have injured them, end quote. Kimmel said in a statement that he hopes that, quote, those making these accusations will file a complaint with the organization's Committee on Professional Ethics so that these accusations can be formally addressed. Kimmel said that the organization cannot act on just rumors about professional misconduct. Now, as an aside, this is something that you guys should take away from this. Kimmel is a very outspoken, vocal male feminist who supposedly speaks about masculinity, i.e. masculine studies, as it were. But he does it from a feminist perspective. He is basically probably of the one good men, he is one of the best. And yet, he has still been Me Too'd. The most staunch male feminists and SJWs are not only still prone to Me Too accusations, but they are actually more vulnerable to having their lives turned asunder because of their proximity to feminists, because they are still men. Even the SPLC co-founder Morris Dees was himself accused of molesting his stepdaughter with a sex toy by his ex-wife during their divorce in 1979, and it has resurfaced specifically to discredit him. The only reason we know of this information is because right-wing sites were digging this stuff up as a means of basically ruining their political opponents, like the co-founder of the SPLC himself. No man is immune, and the chickens have come to roost. And the worst part is, it makes it very difficult to talk about anything regarding actual cases of any kind of gender discrimination, or what things like due process, and if people have actually committed any sort of wrongdoings, when you have everybody playing this game of let's see if we can dig up sexual harassment history with these men, basically. So, the last thing I will say before I give it to the floor is, as much as I disagree with Michael Kimmel and as much as he pisses me off, he needs us. He needs us. Because nobody else is going to give him a fair hearing in this case. Now, do I think he did it? I don't know. There's no evidence. The point is, he was accused, and now he has to deal with it, because he's one of the main people that's all about the listen and believe thing. That's why he has this super, meaningless statement about, I have to validate the voices and take these concerns seriously. Although he's probably wondering what the fuck he did to actually, to actually sort of put himself in this situation. So, does anybody else want to say anything about Michael Kimmel? I know you guys are chomping at the bit here.
I'm not even holding back laughter. I'm concerned for the man.
There you go, he said with a chuckle at the end.
He sounds exactly like Justin Trudeau did after his accusation.
It's the same thing. Yep.
It's the same non-denial denial. I can't really say I didn't do nothing, because I've been saying that men aren't allowed to say I didn't do nothing, but I did do nothing. And yes, you did. You advocated against other men who didn't do anything to have their due process rights. And that's what you did. And now you're dealing with it. And I agree that he does need us, and that it is vital that we continue to fight for due process rights, not specifically just for these guys, but
No.
because even the hardest man to defend deserves a defense. I've actually defended some pretty hard to defend men in my past who have faced false allegations after being dipshits, and while being dipshits the entire time they were being defended. And for the record, I am not talking about the 7 years in hell guy. He's a good guy. But just because a guy is a dipshit doesn't mean that he's guilty of something he didn't do.
Yeah.
You didn't do something, you didn't do it. And for some reason, feminists and the rest of the world have forgotten that you are only guilty of what you actually did, and not just of being disliked in general. And this is a hard situation for us because we all want to look at this and go, well, you just got your just desserts, but those just desserts are going to hit every man if we don't keep our standards standard.
Yeah. The worst part about this, though, the bit that kind of annoys me about this potentially, is that Kimmel could come out of the other end of this experience and suddenly be for due process rights for men, or at least questioning the Me Too movement, possibly seeing it as the witch hunt that it actually is. But the reason why it annoys me is that the only reason why he would change his position is because he became a victim of it. And the reason why that bugs me is because if you have a problem with this stuff, it should be on principle alone. You should be able to look at it and objectively say, you know what, that doesn't seem right to me. There's something wrong with that. I am involved with men's issues, not because I'm afraid of those things coming and bite me in the ass, or I've been the victim of them before. Because honestly, I've been pretty safe from just about every men's issue. But I do it because I see that it is unjust and it's not right and it's unfair and it should be addressed. And for that I care, And yeah, I know people who have been the victim of those things, but it hasn't personally affected me. And I think that maybe for some people, it has to be something like that. It's sort of like how the staunchest feminists suddenly become less feminist or even non-feminist when they have a son. So the reason why it annoys me is, even though at the end of the day, it's nice that you've, reevaluated your position, the reason that you're actually changing your position is because you are now potentially the victim of your own ideology, of the thing that you supported. And I guess I don't have a tremendous amount of respect for people who do things that way.
I think another thing that bugs me about it is the fact that if someone like Kimmel becomes a due process rights advocate, people on that violent, angry, it's okay to punch Nazis and everyone that disagrees with us are Nazis side of the fence, those guys are going to act like due process rights were never a thing that we advocated for, and this is the first time anybody's ever advocated for due process rights, and isn't he great for suddenly figuring out that they're important, when in reality he's been opposing our due process rights activism for years and may just suddenly have discovered that they're important because of the impact. So that the idea that the mainstream, or rather the establishment, because they're not really mainstream, but the establishment media is going to turn around and act like this is a new thing, and they'll find a way to twist it too. They'll find a way to twist it into a for women thing instead of a for men thing. This is bad because this could also happen to a woman. It won't be on the principle of individual human rights, and it won't be recognized that the people who have been advocating for those individual human rights the whole time were right, were correct, and are not Nazis, and should not be tracked down and attacked on the street. And instead it'll be another way to attack us.
Yeah, they're never going to admit that we were right about anything. Like a few years ago, it was MRAs are wrong. It's wrong about everything. And eventually it was, I suppose we do need due process. That's an important thing. And I suppose it is barbaric to genitally mutilate babies. And we probably should do something about the family courts. So apart from that, what have the MRAs ever done for us?
Either that or they'll be like, we came up with that. I think I saw Lacey Green on like a Dave Rubin thing, and when he basically brought up men's issues, and he asked her if she saw the red pill, and he was like, any of that stuff surprise you? And she was like, no, I knew about all of it. We've talked about it. And it's like, besides the circumcision thing, I think you found this shit. So, and of course, yes, they will make it about women because that's where the money is. I mean, look at this. This photo here is from this conference that Kimmel attended called Women Deliver. And it's like a packed house, you know, full of people that paid good money to go. And I know he got paid well to speak there. I mean, doing feminist work is very profitable. If we wanted to make money here at Honey Badger Radio, if that was the only thing we wanted to do, then this would just be a feminist channel. And we'd have like fucking millions of subs. And we could probably make really convincing feminist arguments too, if we really wanted to. But this is just not easy to do.
Yeah.
Talk about men's
We
issues.
could make convincing feminist arguments with
Yeah.
them all. You know, even the dumb ones, like when we fight for something for years and years and get stymied for years and years by the system that feminists have in place. And then they realize that eventually the tide is going to turn against them and that thing is going to not go their way anymore. So they support just a small legislative change. And then they're like, oh, MRAs have been complaining about this for years and they've done nothing, but look what we accomplished. That's, yeah, we've heard all of it. We've heard MRAs don't talk about these things that they've been talking about for years. We've heard it's worse when it happens to women. We've heard everybody hates women. We've heard everything. We could make a mint if we wanted to change the way we are. And it'd be easy too, because you just turn around and say, well, we've seen the light. We were wrong this whole time. We were being exploited by the greater community. Now we've changed our minds. We've learned our lesson. And here's what we can tell you about the men's rights community, and just spout a bunch of bullshit, whatever they want to hear. We'd have money thrown at us from every direction. That is basically the way the feminist movement and the social justice ideologue side of the fence is. They don't care if you're telling the truth. They care if you sell the victim narrative, and they care if you sell the opponents or the devil narrative. And that's all it takes.
Yep.
Yeah, that's why I'm never particularly moved at the charge of you MRAs never get anything done, which is a charge we hear quite a lot, by the way, from everywhere in the sphere and from everywhere in other spheres. But we keep on going, and we're going to keep on going until due process is fixed and genital mutilation is fixed and the family courts are fixed. And those same people are still going to go, you MRAs have never achieved anything. You didn't do any of those things. It was the people in charge who were doing them. So yeah, there's nothing we can do that's going to make you change your tune. You're just doing that thing where you say shit to try and dishearten people, and no one's particularly sure why. I think it's because you genuinely do have a sad life. There's nothing worth advocating for, which is fair enough. You can be nihilistic here. That's fine too. We'll greet you with open arms and we'll bite your head off.
Wow. Okay.
Run a hot bath, get a straight razor, and just get to work. Get to work.
Ah, too soon.
Thank you, Alex.
Can you imagine a world with no new Alex Jones memes?
I don't want to.
It's not the timeline I asked for.
This makes me sad. I'm sorry, it's too soon, guys. All right, so we got some super chats. Hoki Bukisa gives us $1.99 and says, Kimmel touched my tra-la-la. Well, I'm sorry, you're a man. We don't have to believe that. Mr. Roboto gives us $2 and says, what he needs is Jesus and a swift kick in the balls. Hoki Bukisa gives us $4.99 and says, if one woman says he did it and another one says he didn't, who do we listen and believe? The one with the smaller bean? I think you may be onto something there. But not all women have beans, you transphobic bigot.
The question
Maybe-
is who's going to do the exam, and afterwards, will they get accused?
Oh, you better believe it. Maybe they should
Well,
examine each other.
If one woman says he didn't rape her and she's the woman he actually had sex with, but then a third party woman comes along and says no, that was rape, then it is very possible that the third party's decision will overrule the other two's decision. In fact, it still goes on all the time. It ends up in forced marriages and shotgun weddings and shit. Those poor those poor women's. That's the correct thing. Sorry, I said the wrong thing. It's the women. It's the women who suffer from forced marriages.
Well, sure, nobody wants to marry a shotgun.
Boom.
Oh, okay. Zaranx gives us $5 and says, is it the case that feminists are tired of male allies, or was MGTOW so successful that only male allies were left for feminists to target?
Neither.
Yeah, it's neither. I think honestly it's a combination of male feminists are more likely to be predatory, therefore it's more likely to happen, and feminists are more likely to accuse or see male behavior as aggressive and misogynistic and rapey. And I think that it's actually the latter is probably more common than the former, to be honest.
Yeah, you picture this in a room full of maybe thieves and con artists. Somebody complains that somebody else got into their bag and stole their stuff. Are you surprised?
Yeah, but being like, constantly in a room full of like uber feminists is like being in a room full of laser tripwires or just bullets firing across the place like booby traps. You're not going to make it across that room without statistically one of them's going to get you. So it's not going to bother any of us because we're mostly like hermits on the internet. But well, I suppose a lot of us have jobs that involve women and stuff. But that's why they have to be careful to even bring this stuff up in public. It would be more difficult.
They don't want to
accuse
just piss on us.
It would be more difficult to accuse someone like me of sexual assault, not just because I don't have much of that kind of life, but because it's easy to see how someone would make it up. It's a lie that would be tailor-made for the likes of me, because MRA and stuff. So it's easier to see how it could be fabricated. But with the likes of Kimmel, he's surrounded by people and indeed philosophies that involve listening and believing to women. So why would a woman possibly lie, eh? And why would she eat one of her own? It would be a strategically awful decision to eat one of her own, unless he's a genuine rapist.
Yes, in which case he needs to be outed. He's infiltrating us. He probably planned it for years.
Since before he was born, maybe.
Yeah, since before he was born, exactly. Zaranx, I'm aware that it's a joke, but you know how we get. We just wanted to comment on it anyway. He also gave us another...
Did he ever smuggle plutonium in his bra?
Michael Kimmel doesn't wear a bra. I think.
How do you know?
He leaves those puppies out because he's all about freeing the nipple, I think.
There we go.
And bras are oppression.
That's not a nipple. It's just.
Well, you don't have to wear it. You just bring it along.
Oh, okay. He's like a purse. Okay, Zaranx gives another $5 and says, Brian, why should we say Kimmel needs us? That's like feminists taking up for women who never asked them to. Let Kimmel ask, evil grin. Well, I'm just making the point that we would be, like, in a case where someone is potentially falsely accused, after they've done all this listen and believe preaching, we are one of the few people that are basically calling for due process rights for men, even men that we don't like. Because I don't know that anyone here is a big fan of Michael Kimmel or male feminists in general. But I think I understand. And maybe there's something I'd like to do this with either Prim or Aiden sometime. where I look at the psychology of male feminists, because I think that male feminists are doing that because they are looking for female approval in some way, and this is something that men's issues advocates could push them away from. Like, you don't need, women's approval. Now, another thing is of course feminism itself is quite profitable, so there's a pretty high chance that he's doing it also because it can give him a comfy life. So, but at the end of the day, the only people who are really going to care about him are people like us, and that's why I say that. That doesn't mean I necessarily, like, if he's guilty, then he's guilty. But I'm making the point that the people that he has the biggest problem with are the ones that can do the most good in this situation.
I'll go even a step further. It's not Kimmel in this situation that I give a shit about. It is the principle of the importance of due process rights.
Mm-hmm.
It is my opposition to the listen and believe mandate. And I really, really think it is vital that we remain consistent, no matter who is accused, no matter what we think of that individual person, no matter what the situation, that we remain consistent in those principles. If we ever want to achieve anything in the realm of restoring due process rights in our nation's legal systems, or obtaining due process rights, for some of the nations that we have listeners from don't even have due process rights. Some of them think they do, and they don't have due process rights, and they're finding that out as their court cases make the news. But this is not something that we can be fair weather about. It's not like you stay home from the due process protest because the weather is feminist this week. I'm sorry, but it just doesn't work that way. And I don't give a shit personally about Michael Kimmel and how this is affecting him. I don't know the guy. I don't like what I've seen of him publicly. I don't feel bad that he is facing consequences of his own advocacy. I just don't want that shit to spread to the rest of the men in the world and the legal system and undermine our work.
Yep. Fillerator gives us $10 Canadian and says, "Let Kimmel twist in the wind. Help him only if he is absolutely the last one to help, and then only if asked." Sure, I agree with that. I'm not offering to help him. I'm actually just going to watch and see how things unfold. I'm not actually saying we're literally going to reach out to Michael Kimmel and ask him for help. We're not doing that. I think that you can only really help people that want it, right? And I don't think he'd come to us anyway. He'd probably just go to his powerful friends in academia. French Honey Badger gives us $2 and says, "Hannah," with a laughy face, referring to your pun about shotguns from before. Mr. Roboto gives us $2 and says he will do 20 years and Kimmel will become Meninist. That would be hilarious if he just turned, like, changes sides like a pro wrestler in the dramatic sense. Would that be becoming a face? Yeah, going from a heel to a face. That's what I would say. Zeranx gives us $5.
Trust him.
No, not at all, because he can go heel again. Zeranx gives us $5 and says, "I agree, Hannah. I'm just enjoying the Schadenfreude." Yeah, of course. I am too. That's why it's a news story, because it's like, how many MRAs have been accused of sexual misconduct? Like, how many have been Me Too'd? I don't know any.
None. Yeah, no. And not just because there's hardly any of us, but because, in order to become an MRA, you have to have probably a clear enough conscience to get there in the first place. Because I think that's what leads men to feminism. I don't think it's feminism that turns men to sexual predators. I think it's men who already have a guilty conscience who are drawn to it. So it stands to reason you probably don't have that guilty conscience if you become an MRA. And like I said, it's strategically not worth their while to bother trying to falsely accuse an MRA, because it looks like a political decision.
Falsely accused MRAs, what they do is they take men who have actually done something and accuse them of being MRAs. So, as a sexual predator, he's an MRA. It doesn't matter whether he was before he was a sexual predator or not. or before he shot so many people, or before he stabbed so many people, or whatever. Well, now that he's done something violent, we will call him an MRA, in the media, and therefore he's an MRA. That's what happens with us. We don't get prominent members of the movement accused. We get the accused declared prominent members of the movement by the media.
Mm-hmm.
A reminder not to miss the blog talk upload of this episode, where nobody's voice will be robot ever. They will all be fixed.
Yeah, Hannah, you were rebutting a little bit, but we got the gist, so it's fine. Okay, well, I don't know if there's any final thoughts. Let me see if there's any more super chats that I may have missed. No, there are not. So with that said, we've actually gotten through all the stories, and it's only been an hour and 15 minutes, so that's cool. We're going to go into the after show, where we will look at this article from Forbes entitled, "Why in the World Should Men Stop Mentoring Women Post Me Too?" It's just trying to make the argument that even though we live in a Me Too timeline, men should not stop mentoring women. They should just stop harassing them, and then we'll be okay. So, well, let's see what Prudy Gorchikhan has to say about that. And we're gonna go ahead and go.
Wait,
her name?
Her name is Prudy.
Prudy, yes, Prudy Gorguechan. Yeah.
An anti-male argument about sexual harassment written by a chick named Prudy. That's perfect.
So, if you want to join us in the after show, you know what you got to do. You got to become a patron. One level of patronage will get you to watch them. Another level will let you join in some capacity, either live in the chat. You can type into the Discord, or you can actually speak in there as well. I'm not going to take up too much more of your time, because people usually start leaving the stream at this point. But be sure to hit the like button on your way out, at the very least, and we'd appreciate that very much. And yeah, I want to thank my co-panelists, Mike, and Hannah, for joining us on this week HBR News Show. And I want to thank you guys for watching. And we'll talk to you guys next week. Have a lovely